The interstellar ship Avalon is cruising silently through space, on course for a colony planet called Homestead 2. Inside, everything looks deserted. The vessel is running on autopilot, with all 258 crew members and 5,000 passengers asleep in hibernation pods. But then trouble hits. The ship drifts into an asteroid belt. Its shields start to weaken. Energy is rerouted to strengthen the main shield, but it's not enough. Avalon is heading straight for a massive asteroid. The collision rattles the ship, knocking systems offline and triggering multiple malfunctions. While the ship begins repairing itself, one of the hibernation pods unexpectedly activates. The passenger inside is Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer. His pod opens, and an automated system guides him through the awakening process. It tells him he's been in suspended animation for 120 years, and the ship is now just 4 months from reaching Homestead 2. He's assured that he'll be able to enjoy the ship's many luxuries during that short wait. Jim gets briefed on his ID band, his assigned cabin, and the activities available until arrival. Nervous but excited, he gets ready, leaves his room, and heads to an orientation class. The holographic teacher starts describing life on Earth. Overcrowded, overpriced, and overrated, but Jim keeps interrupting, asking why he's the only one there. The hologram ignores him and continues, which makes Jim realize it's not programmed to answer him. He searches the ship for others. When he reaches the main concourse, it's completely empty. An automated help desk tries to assist, but when he asks for a real person, it directs him to a steward. No one's there either. He requests to see the captain and makes his way to the bridge, but even there, the crew is still asleep. Eventually, Jim wanders into the observatory, and that's when the truth hits him. The ship isn't 4 months from Homestead 2. It's actually 90 years away. He woke up way too early. Panicked, he rushes back to concourse and sends an urgent message to Earth, asking how to get back into hibernation. The system coolly replies that messages take 55 years to reach Earth, and another 55 years to receive a reply. Jim is crushed, devastated and alone. He roams the ship until he stumbles upon the bar, where he finally sees someone. Relieved, he starts talking to the bartender, but something feels off. When the man serves him a drink, Jim realizes he's not human at all. He's an android named Arthur. The next day, Jim wakes in his cabin and heads to the cafeteria. He quickly discovers that most of the good food is reserved for gold-class passengers. All he gets is plain coffee. Determined to fix the situation, Jim gathers tools and works on his hibernation pod. He climbs in, hopeful, but nothing happens. Not giving up, he tries breaking into the crew's hibernation chambers next. That fails too. Minor glitches keep happening around the ship. Jim falls into a routine, returning to the bar, drinking but mainly talking with Arthur. The android, always calm, suggests he try loosening up and enjoying the luxuries on board. Taking the advice, Jim sneaks into a gold-class suite and begins sampling the ship's upscale perks, restaurants, games, entertainment. But the more he indulges, the emptier he feels. The loneliness only deepens. One night, after too many drinks, Jim stumbles into the hibernation bay. Wandering aimlessly, he finds an airlock lined with spacesuits for spacewalks. Impulsively, he suits up, pulls a lever, and steps outside. The view takes his breath away, an endless canvas of stars. For a brief moment, he's both awestruck and heartbroken, the only conscious human alive to witness it. Drifting weightlessly after releasing his boot magnets, Jim feels the crushing weight of isolation. Back inside, he strips off the suit, but soon finds himself standing in the airlock again, this time without protection. He pulls the lever, ready to end his life. At the last second, instinct kicks in. He panics, runs back inside, and slips on an empty bottle. Shaken, he gets his feet and notices a woman sleeping in one of the pods. Her name, Aurora. Intrigued, Jim searches her passenger file, watching her interview videos. Her voice, her words, her presence captivate him. He listens again and again, eventually sitting by her pod for hours, reading her work and discussing with Arthur at the bar. Aurora becomes his obsession, his perfect partner, forever out of reach. The irony gnaws at him. He left her for a new beginning, only to wake up too early and find the one person he could love trapped in a pod. He wrestles with the idea of waking her. Arthur, ever logical, can't grasp Jim's moral dilemma. If he wakes her, she'll be stranded like him, doomed to die on Avalon. Jim resists at first, but time and loneliness wear him down. Finally, he gives in. He activates her pod. As Aurora wakes, going through the same routine he once did, Jim hides. Later, he accidentally runs into her in the concourse, acting just as startled and confused as she is. He explains they're the only two awake and takes her to the observatory. When Aurora insists on going back into hibernation, Jim admits there's no equipment on board to make that possible. They're stranded. Aurora, overwhelmed, tries to process it all. She feels sympathy for Jim. He survived alone for over a year. Jim, meanwhile, drowns in guilt, begging Arthur to keep a secret. that he was the one who woke her. Aurora adapts slowly. She explores the ship, eats with Jim, and investigates every possible way back into hibernation. She hacks at locked doors, scours research logs, and digs through the infirmary. But nothing works. More malfunctions crop up across the ship, adding to the tension. She journals, runs laps, swims in the pool, but the reality weighs on her. In a moment of clarity, she interviews Jim about his reasons for leaving Earth. At first, he parrots company slogans, but eventually opens up. He wanted a chance to matter, to build a life on a new world. Later, in the observatory, Aurora shares her truth. She was never meant to stay. She bought a round-trip ticket. Her dream was to live on Homestead 2 for a year, then return to Earth as the first journalist to document the experience. The greatest story ever told. With time, Aurora softens. Jim tries to lift her spirits. He takes her dancing to the ship's theater, to the basketball court. Finally, he introduces her to Arthur at the bar. For a while, Aurora laughs and relaxes, but the weight of the situation always lingers. Jim, still burdened with guilt, crafts a gift for her. When Aurora walks into the observatory, she finds a miniature Chrysler building he's built, an intimate reminder of Earth. Slowly, romance blooms. They share dinner at the bar, swapping stories. Aurora reveals her father died when she was a teenager. Afterward, Jim takes her to the airlock. This time, in spacesuits, they step into the void together. And for the first time since waking, Jim doesn't face the universe alone. Jim switches off the magnets on their boots, and the two of them float freely together in open space. When they return inside, the adrenaline still rushing, they kiss, retreat to his cabin, and end up in bed together. Not long after, they start living as a couple. Aurora moves into Jim's cabin, where she keeps writing about her life aboard the ship. They jog side by side, share every meal, sleep in the same bed. Jim keeps exploring Avalon, and one day discovers a hydroponics bay. He surprises Aurora with flowers he's grown there. On Aurora's birthday, the ship passes a red giant star. They marvel at it from the observatory, and later that night celebrate with dinner at one of the restaurants, followed by drinks at the bar. Jim sneaks off to the restroom to prepare the handmade ring he plans to give her, while Aurora stays behind chatting with Arthur. But the android, unaware it's a secret, casually tells her that Jim was the one who woke her up. When Jim returns, Aurora confronts him in shock and fury. She bolts, panicked and betrayed. By the time Jim gets back to his cabin, all her belongings are gone. The next day, he finds her in the cantina, but the moment he speaks, she storms off. Aurora's grief hardens into rage. One night, she bursts into his cabin, punching and kicking him, screaming that he stole her life. After that, she avoids him completely. Jim resorts to speaking through the ship's comms, begging for forgiveness. He admits he woke her because he fell in love with her, but Aurora refuses to listen. She can't forgive what he's done. Then, another crisis strikes. Jim's cabin shakes from a malfunction, and soon the ship's main command systems begin shutting down. Later, in an elevator, he experiences another failure. Aurora, meanwhile, stumbles upon a tree Jim has planted in the main concourse. Soon after, she sees the food dispensers glitching too. Out of nowhere, a voice comes over comms. The ship's deck chief asking who planted the tree. Aurora and Jim rush to the concourse and meet Gus Mancuso, who's standing in front of it. They quickly explain everything. Their early awakenings, the malfunctions, the year of isolation. Mancuso is baffled. Pod failures aren't supposed to happen, let alone 3. He leads them to the bridge, where he realizes the ship has serious problems. But much of the data has to be checked manually. On their way out, a maintenance robot nearly crashes onto them. Proof that the failures are getting worse. Mancuso begins teaching them how to collect the system logs. Later, Jim joins him at the hibernation pods, where Mancuso pieces together what happened with Aurora's. Horrified, he tells Jim what he did was unforgivable. Meanwhile, Aurora meets Mancuso on the bridge, and when the topic comes up again, he admits there's nothing he can do to undo it. Jim eventually arrives carrying yet another broken robot, the 16th. Mancuso is visibly deteriorating, coughing up blood. He heads off to rest, but it's clear he doesn't have much time. That night, Aurora can't sleep. She heads to the pool for a swim, but suddenly the ship loses gravity. Water lifts into a massive floating sphere, trapping her inside. She thrashes desperately, drowning, until the gravity drive kicks back in, and she slams into the pool, gasping for breath. She and Jim race separately to find Mancuso, colliding at the bridge. Together, the 3 of them piece together the truth. A catastrophic event happened 2 years earlier that crippled a major system. Since then, Avalon has been running on the edge, every other system straining to compensate. If they don't find and fix the root problem soon, the ship will fail completely, and all 5,000 sleeping passengers will die. They set out to locate the fault, but Mancuso collapses. Jim and Aurora rush into the infirmary, where the diagnosis is grim. Hibernation sickness untreatable. He's dying. Later, the three meet in the observatory one last time. Mancuso gives Jim his ID bracelet, charges him with saving the ship, and quietly passes away. Almost immediately, alarms blare. The lights flash red, and Avalon shudders violently. Jim grabs Aurora's hand. They have no time to waste. They sprint toward engineering as failures cascade across the ship. The gravity drive falters again, and even Arthur glitches and collapses. Jim deactivates him before he can do more harm. At last, they reach engineering, where the real problem awaits. In engineering, Jim and Aurora trace the problem to the ship's power plant. When they open a hatch, a sudden blast pulls Aurora into a hull breach. The asteroid impact had torn open that section. Jim is yanked in two, clinging desperately to the hatch as it tries to seal on him. At the last second, they manage to slam it shut, sealing the breach. But the danger isn't over. Jim quickly realizes there are multiple breaches. Following the meteor's path, they discover it slammed into the reactor control computer, crippling it. Jim believes he can replace the damaged parts. Together, they track one down and swap it in, but the automatic vending sequence still fails. They try a manual override. It fails again. Jim understands a grim truth. Someone has to go outside and open the vent door manually to cool the reactor. At the airlock, he hands Aurora Mancuso's ID bracelet, just in case he doesn't make it back. She helps him into the suit, her voice breaking as she begs him to return, admitting she can't survive alone. Aurora races back to the reactor room, where temperatures have already climbed to catastrophic levels. A violent burst in the reactor sends a bolt of energy slashing into her arm, just as Jim reaches the vent door outside. Fighting the heat and alarms, he realizes he'll have to physically hold the vent open. He radios Aurora, telling her the plan. She refuses at first, desperate not to lose him, but Jim insists. The lives of 5,000 sleeping passengers depend on it. Through tears, Aurora initiates the venting sequence. The reactor stabilizes, but the blast of expelled fumes slams into Jim, snapping his tether and hurling him into open space. His suit pressure drops fast. Barely conscious, he tells Aurora what happened. Without hesitation, Aurora throws on another suit and launches out after him. Her tether runs out, snapping her back, but at the last instant, she manages to grab his drifting line. She pulls him in with every ounce of strength, dragging him to the infirmary. It's too late. Jim is lifeless. Refusing to give up, Aurora uses Mancuso's bracelet to override the medical pod's protocols, forcing it into emergency resuscitation mode. Machines take over. Seconds stretch like hours. Then Jim breathes again. He's alive. Relief floods her, and in that moment, she forgives him. In time, Aurora repairs Arthur, and together she and Jim give Mancuso a solemn space burial. Later, Jim brings her back to the infirmary with a revelation. He's figured out how to reprogram the medical pod to function as a hibernation chamber. He tells her she can use it, sleep the rest of the journey, and wake safely at Homestead 2. But Aurora makes her choice. She won't leave him. Instead, she stays awake, and together they live their lives aboard Avalon. 88 years later, the ship finally arrives at Homestead 2. The crew awakens to a startling sight, Avalon transformed. In the grand concourse, a flourishing garden and signs of a life fully lived. And there, a recorded message from Aurora, recounting the extraordinary story of the years she and Jim shared while the rest of humanity slept.